ask this, a very basic question is, what exactly is blockchain, right? Fundamentally speaking, from a technology standpoint, blockchain is just a database. It's a distributed database where you have added security and consensus to it before you even enter into the database. Basically, the data is always there. You will not be able to modify the data, and it's a whole record or a ledger, essentially. So if you want to think about it, it's just a database, right? And why would you want to do blockchain? So a lot of business networks right now today, are, as you can see on the right hand side of the image, they do a lot of centralized clearing and settlement, right? And this can be anything. It can be in the finance industry, it can be the supply logistics industry, it can be pretty much any industries out there that has a ledger or a business network. Right, a network of businesses communicating with each other, right, and agreeing on certain things, and there needs to be some level of trust, right? And right now, a lot of the trust in the business network is really it's really human trust in a way. There's no actual verifiable trust system, and that is the reason for blockchain. Is that once you implement blockchain, you have everything is decentralized. You own a piece of the chain, or rather the piece of the ledger itself. You have a copy of it, of the database, and you will be able to access and query for information from that ledger. Right? And of course, that is just the fundamental of blockchain. So where Hyperledger comes in even more, right, is that previously how monitoring of asset ownerships or pretty much all of this, right, is when you have a centralized model, you try to do a distributed model like this, you have lots of API integrations, you have communications back and forth, you have incidents, you have, a whole bunch of lots of, am I allowed to say bad words here? Lots of crap, right? Lots of shit, essentially, right? And as from a coding perspective, there's a lot of things that you need to do, and it becomes very inefficient, it becomes very expensive, and of course, because of the security and everything, you have to re-implement a lot of things. And that's one of the reasons right now, at this point of time, there's a lot of interest in blockchain. And the reason for blockchain is that you literally own the ledger also, right? And it's all distributed. And one of the things with the Hyperledger project is that it's trying to be the base foundation of the code for blockchain, so to speak. Think of it like the kernel of an operating system. So Hyperledger wants to be the kernel of blockchain, right? That operating system, so to speak, so that all other blockchains can run on top of it. When that happens, basically you are able to have, you can implement consensus, provenance, immutability, finality, and various other stuff, right? And one of the things with the current blockchain, or what you're familiar with, Bitcoin, yes, you guys are all familiar with Bitcoin, right? Is that it's too open. It's too open of a model. There's basically it takes right now. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes to do any verification of a transaction, and so it takes some time. So it doesn't make sense for a lot of the business networks and the verification and all of that stuff, right? The consensus part of it. And because it's open, there's a lot of information that, in terms from a banking sector or security or finance or supply chain or whatever it is, a lot of people don't really want that information to be too open. They want to control that flow of information and the visibility of information. So one of the things with Hyperledger is it is a collaborative effort to created to advance blockchain technology, okay, by identifying and addressing important features for cross-industry open standard. The cross-industry open standard part of it is very important, because what Hyperledger wants to become is to create a pluggable system of various components where you can modify your consensus model, you can add new consensus models, you can add new security models, you can add various what we call, or what we normally know as smart contracts, but in Hyperledger we call it chain code. Yes, we call it chain code, right? You can write your own chain code to verify the transaction and things like that. And basically, because each individual industry has its own standards, so one of the things is to be able to build a platform, or rather to build the kernel, so to speak, right, that everybody can actually modify, use, and add on different components to it. And this is actually the fundamental of what Hyperledger is. By the way, I'm not from Hyperledger project. I'm actually, this is like an interest for me only, and I've been playing around with the code base and everything ever since it first came out when it announced in December, January. And I've been playing around with the code base from IBM with they call it the open blockchain previously. So now they've merged the code base into the Hyperledger project. And this is just a basic overview of how business networks work, right? You have the financial market network, you have the regional financial market, you have the global trade network, and so on and so forth. There are a lot of different networks, and in order to get all the information, to verify it, to have a consensus, to agree and trust, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, and there's a lot of technology involved with it. Once blockchain is implemented into each of these individual networks, the ability to communicate between the blockchain networks becomes a lot easier, right? Because of the contracts and everything that you can actually create through the smart contracts, and it will be individual and customizable based on the individual networks. As you might or maybe not know, that regional financial market networks versus the global trade network has different security models, have different consensus and trust models and things like that. So with the Hyperledger, it actually helps give a standard, so to speak, that you can build upon. So what exactly is Hyperledger? What is in scope of Hyperledger? It is not going to be the blockchain, no, right? It is going to be the fundamental base ledger that will cover the data structures, the membership services, which is the security, the validation framework, the identity services, the network peer services, and so on and so forth. Anything that's additional, say for example, what you hopefully you guys would know as Ethereum. You guys know what Ethereum is? One of the most popular open source blockchain platforms out there, Ethereum. They built basically everything that's above also, right? So the application layer, the development facilities, the extensions, and so on and so forth, right? That is not in the scope of the Hyperledger. The Hyperledger is to provide that basic environment of smart contracts, all these data structures and services that you can actually extend and build your extensions on top of it, build your plugins on top of it. So fundamentally, this is the breakdown of what Hyperledger looks like. You have the membership part of it, which the membership services has a few components to it, which is the registration, identity management, auditability, and so on and so forth, right? This is currently the structure of what Hyperledger looks like. It will probably change, but for now, this is what it's going to look like. You have the blockchain and the transactions part of it, which is the consensus manager, which you can actually create your own individual chain code and consensus, so on and so forth, right? Your P2P protocol, which right now the P2P protocol is based on I can't remember the P2P protocol right now, but you can actually create your own P2P protocol. The chain code itself, the services itself, right now they have created Go. So you write your chain code or your smart contract in Go, but the idea in this Hyperledger project is to actually allow you to write your smart contracts or chain code in any language. So they are slowly extending that out, and definitely, if you can actually contribute on the project and have more languages supported in the chain for the chain code, that'll be awesome. So this is how it basically looks like. How long do I have left? Okay, let's try another 5 more minutes. So I just want to quickly go through with you. This is the very fundamental. How do we get started? So I'm going to show some code. I hope you guys wouldn't be scared by the code. So let me quickly switch over to my command line. All right, so I don't have, apparently the internet is not working, but if you go to github.com/hyperledger, right, they recently did a hackathon in New York City not long ago, I think in a few weeks ago, and they submitted the code base. So there were four code base that was submitted to the Hyperledger project, and basically this hackathon was to merge these 4 code bases into one code base, which is right now it's called Hyperledger Fabric. Okay, and within this Hyperledger Fabric, once you download the code in GitHub, it will see this structure, scripts, vendor, consensus, and so on and so forth. This is where the code is. The code is all written, it's all written in Go at the moment. It's in the core. This is where the core Hyperledger blockchain is located. Where you want to go, right, in order to create. So one of the things that blockchain is essentially you have multiple peers, right? And each of these peers is a node, right, in this blockchain, so to speak. And this node can be either, you can specify whether this node is going to be the access of being to be a consensus manager, so to speak, or to be able to do something, right? Or it's just a front end to submit or so and so forth. So how do you create a peer? The first thing you go to is in the peer itself. This is where all the code is under main.go, and core.yaml provides all the configuration. So how do you get this set up? You need to set up the dev environment, which is running Vagrant. This is the simplest right now. I'm trying to get it working on Docker right now, so didn't manage to get it working for this presentation. But Vagrant is all the scripts are there. You can quickly just set up a Vagrant instance, and then you just SSH in. So, oh, this is too big, too small. There we go. Does that work? All right. So one of the things after you've actually set up the whole Vagrant instance and everything, right? There are a few things that you need to know. There is the membership service, which you can run optionally right now if you want to do that. It sets up the certificates. It sets up the basic, username, password only in plain text at this point of time, but you can add on. But at this point of time, that's the membership service. So you can run the membership service like this, which is /membership service, and it will start the all the certificates and everything and all of that stuff. I'm not going to use the membership today, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start running the peer and create a peer. So one of the things, as I mentioned, the peer is located in fabric/peer, and you want to run it as a .peer, peer --peer chain code dev. This is just a development environment where you can do the debugging. So chain code dev basically turns on all the logging and everything. So when I set that, it sets up the, when I set that, it sets up all the chain code, sorry, not chain code, but the peer, individual peer. So this is where you want to set up in the individual network, business network, or the companies or whatever it is, a peer, right? You want to set up a peer to connect. So you have a main peer. So this is a main peer, and then you would have secondary peers, which you have to provide an IP address to point to the secondary peers, the primary peers, in order to create that network of a blockchain, so to speak. So as you can see, you have the address over there, you have the ID, and so on and so forth. Okay, so now I've run a peer, right? I have one peer, I can have multiple peers. What do I do next? I need to have a contract, right? A smart contract. So what I do is that I have a sample contract over here, which is under samples. Let me increase the increase it. So I have a sample contract here. So what I do is I set the chain code ID and the address to 3033, which is set in my core.yaml, and get this chain code. It's written in Go to register yourself into the peer. Okay, and once it registers into one peer, it'll automatically propagate down to the other peers. Okay, so this is what's happening. Okay, so once I register the smart contract, and I can register multiple smart contracts to the peer, the individual peers. So now this one is a very simple smart contract. It's just A and B, and I'm going to initialize right now. So all this initialization and everything can be done using right now it's all REST APIs. So in order to figure out like whether my chain is actually running, I can call the local host, which is running my Vagrant, under port 3000/chain. This is the REST API, and it will give me the current block hash. Right? So if you know what blockchain is, it's all about hashes and everything. So it'll provide the chain. It'll give me how many blocks there are in a chain at the moment, so you can actually calculate. And then in order to get the first block, blocks. I keep forgetting that. Blocks /0, you can send it, and you'll be able to get this. Okay? So that's how you verify whether if your blockchain is actually working right now. So what I'm going to do is in the peer itself, it will call a REST API automatically for me when I do an invoke, right, to the name all the way below. Let me clear. Let me do that. What it's going to do is going to create an invoke init. What it's going to do is it's going to create an A and a B. Right, so it's just a name of two entities, $100 or 100 whatever it is, and 200 on the other side. And this is just the initial init function. Very simple. This is all in JSON format. It's just calling a REST API, so you can just do it in REST also if you want to. It's all registered there. I can essentially do a query. What's my B at the moment? What's my A at the moment, and I can do a transaction right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to invoke a transaction. I'm going to transmit A, number $10 or 10 whatever to B, right? I'm going to do that, right? And it does the transaction with the hash and all that. If I actually go back to my peer, you will see that all of this debugging and everything, you will see all the states that are happening. All right, so this is the very fundamental of what blockchain is. Right now, okay, you might be asking, what's the consensus? So by default, what the consensus I have right now is no op. Okay, no op means no operation. There's no consensus. I just agree on every transaction that happens. You can create your own consensus model. At this point of time, let me go to the code itself. At this point of time in the consensus, there are two consensus models at the moment. There is the no ops and there's the OBC PBFT consensus model. All right, and you can start building your own consensus model if you want to. Alrighty, and that is in a very short nutshell blockchain and Hyperledger. I hope I've covered pretty much all of that. Just a quick one. Just a lot of slides, just quick one over here. The benefits is it saves time, it removes all the cost, and it reduces risk. You have all of that stuff. There are a few use cases that are very interesting. One of the use cases that a lot of people know or is familiar with is the financial ledger. The other use cases that I think has a lot of interest in this community that I've been talking to is the supply chain, actually. So being able to have each supply chain business network to enter into the blockchain so that you can verify whether, say for example, if your food is organic or not and really organic or not. right? And so on and so forth. So there's a lot of use cases to that. This is blockchain. This is Hyperledger. There are a lot of big companies involved at the moment. So IBM, Intel, Hitachi, and so on and so forth. And we've got lots. There's lots of great companies involved. So if you want to get connected with the Hyperledger project, these are where you can get connected. These are all the links. GitHub is the most important part. You can talk to the guys in Hyperledger project right now, and Slack. And this is the Hyperledger project. And my name is Justin. Thank you very much. Right, and if you have any